It really looks like A Quiet Place Part 3 franchise is getting ready to evolve into something much bigger this time around, because the latest casting news and production updates are hinting at a completely different direction for the story. That could be exactly what the series needs right now. The first two movies were already successful because they mixed emotional family drama with terrifying horror, but now it feels like the franchise might finally start exploring the darker side of humanity itself, not just the monsters. Back when A Quiet Place first released, nobody really expected it to become such a massive hit. John Krasinski surprised a lot of people because most audiences knew him mainly from comedy roles before that. But then he stepped into horror directing and delivered something that felt fresh and intense. The whole concept was simple but terrifying at the same time. Earth gets invaded by creatures that hunt entirely through sound, so humanity basically has to survive in complete silence. Even the smallest noise could get someone killed in seconds, which made every scene feel stressful in the best way possible. What made the first movie work so well wasn't just the monsters, though. It was the family at the center of the story. Krasinski's Lee Abbott and Emily Blunt's Evelyn felt believable as parents trying to protect their children in a completely broken world. So even though the movie had giant alien creatures tearing people apart, the emotional core still felt grounded. That's probably why audiences connected with it so strongly. And because the movie was made on a relatively small budget and earned over $340 million worldwide, it instantly became one of the biggest horror success stories in years. After that, the franchise naturally expanded. A Quiet Place Part 2 pushed the story further by showing more of the outside world instead of staying isolated on the farm the entire time. The Abbott family finally encountered other survivors, including characters played by Cillian Murphy and Jimon Hunsu. And although the sequel still focused heavily on survival against the creatures, it also started hinting at how society had completely collapsed after the invasion. But one thing the franchise has interestingly avoided so far is a true human villain. The monsters were always the main threat. Sure, there were dangerous groups of survivors here and there, especially in Part 2, but none of them became central antagonists. Most of the time, the creatures showed up and wiped them out pretty quickly anyway. So the movie stayed focused mainly on survival horror instead of turning into a story about humans fighting humans. Then came A Quiet Place Day 1, which expanded the universe even further by showing what happened during the very first days of the invasion in New York City. Instead of following the Abbott family directly, the movie focused on new characters played by Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn. This was a risky move because franchises often struggle when they move away from their main characters, but surprisingly, audiences still showed up. The movie made strong money at the box office and proved the franchise could survive even without constantly relying on the original family storyline. And now that Part 3 is officially happening, things are starting to get really interesting because of the new cast additions. Krasinski recently shared images of the scripts online and confirmed that filming has finally started after years of delays. The production is now underway in New York City, and the cast includes Jack O'Connell, Katie O'Brien, and Jason Clarke. All three are strong additions, but O'Connell especially stands out because his recent roles suggest something very different could be happening with the story. The reason fans are paying so much attention to O'Connell is because he's been building a reputation for playing really intense and unsettling characters lately. In Sinners, he played a charismatic vampire leader named Remick, who manipulates people into joining him. And in 28 Years Later and its follow-up, 28 Years Later The Bone Temple, he reportedly plays Sir Jimmy Crystal, the leader of a violent cult-like group. So audiences are starting to associate him with dangerous but strangely charming villains. That's why a bunch of people now think A Quiet Place Part 3 might finally introduce a proper human antagonist, and that idea makes a lot of sense. At this point in the timeline, humanity has already spent years surviving in this destroyed world. People know more about the creatures now, and survivors are probably learning how to fight back more effectively. So naturally, the next stage of the story could shift toward humans battling for power while civilization slowly tries to rebuild itself. That's actually a really logical evolution for the franchise because horror series usually need to grow in order to stay fresh. The first movie focused on surviving the unknown. The second expanded the world. Day 1 explored the initial chaos. So, Part 3 introducing darker human conflicts would feel like the next natural step. And honestly, O'Connell would fit perfectly into that type of storyline. He has this ability to seem charming and terrifying almost at the same time. One second he can look calm and confident, and the next he feels genuinely dangerous. That kind of unpredictability works extremely well in horror because audiences never feel comfortable around characters like that. So, if he ends up leading some kind of survivor faction or cult, it could create a very different kind of tension compared to the earlier films. At the same time, it doesn't sound like the movie is abandoning the Abbott family either. The story will apparently continue following Evelyn and her children as they keep navigating this brutal world. And because Krasinski confirmed production has started, fans are finally feeling confident that the movie is actually happening after all the delays. That long wait might actually help the movie though. By the time Part 3 releases in 2027, it'll have been 6 years since Part 2. That's a pretty massive gap between sequels, but sometimes long breaks build anticipation instead of hurting it. Audiences had time to miss the franchise, and because Day 1 kept the universe active in the meantime, interest never completely disappeared. There's also a good chance the new movie could connect the different storylines together more directly. Since Jimon Hunsu's Henri appeared in both Part 2 and Day 1, the franchise already established links between the prequel and the main storyline. So it's possible surviving characters like Joseph Quinn's Eric could eventually cross paths with the Abbott family. That kind of crossover would make the world feel bigger and more connected, which is important for long-running franchises. Another reason people are optimistic is because the box office numbers for this series have stayed incredibly strong. Even during difficult periods for theaters, these movies still performed really well. Part 2 earned nearly $300 million worldwide despite releasing when cinemas were still recovering after the pandemic. And that wraps up today's video. If you want to stay in the loop with all the latest movie and series news, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up, because I'll be bringing you more updates on upcoming movies before they even drop. So keep an eye out for that, along with the latest on your other favorite shows and movies. Stay tuned, and I will see you in our next video.